The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Okay, hey, welcome to the BS Report. This is Chuck Klosterman, filling in for Bill Simmons, who is unavailable today. I believe he is buying a speedboat and did not have time to come in and do this interview, but he asked me if I wanted to talk to Al Yankovic, and of course I would. So, Al Yankovic, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you. Oddly enough, I was almost going to go buy a speedboat today, but I decided to do this interview instead, because I've got my priorities, my friend.
I suppose you own a lot of boats.
So many. I've lost count, frankly.
That's part of the sort of the lifestyle you lead would be boating.
I have living large.
How many houses do you have?
Oh, count.
Do you have more than one house, really? I mean, that's a serious
seriously,
question.
I do have more than one house. I inherited my parents' house, and I also have a vacation house.
Ah. And then you have now, do you live in your parents' house? Or
No,
so you have three houses, technically.
Well, now this is we're getting into bragging territory, but since I'm getting the John McCain question, I have to be I have to do full disclosure and say I do own four houses, because the fourth one is the house that my in-laws live in, which I bought as an investment, and they are living in it.
Well, that's incredibly nice of you, too. I bet they think
they were happy about that.
Did well.
They were happy about that.
So I want to get right into this, because I know your time is limited, today being the release of Alpocalypse. That's when we're recording it on the day it has come out, very exciting,
So for the people that are listening to this after the fact, put yourself in the mindset of June 21st, 2011.
You kind of have to move back, because who knows what will happen in the interim, hopefully there will not actually be an apocalypse.
This is
which will then
zombie
make this,
attack, actually, exactly.
The first thing I wanted to ask you about, and I've always wondered this, is I was reading the New York Times story about you, and it mentioned how there was a technical difficulty during your show, and you ended up covering Radio by Elvis Costello.
Right.
Okay. So I was always wondering, because this had to have been a point in your life when maybe you considered pursuing music in a non-novelty way or a more conventional way, and I've always wondered if you did that, what kind of music you would have made.
I probably, it wouldn't be a huge departure from, straight on comedy music. I mean, a lot of my favorite bands are indie bands and alternative bands that are not comedy per se, but, they definitely are quirky.
So Primus you're talking about, or what kind of bands when you're saying, or
Oh, I hate to give laundry lists, but they might be Giants or Ben Folds or any number of indie bands from the '90s I could mention that even some grunge bands that just don't take themselves super seriously and again aren't comedy, but they have a sense of humor and they're a little left to center.
Okay, but what year were you born?
59.
59. So you were 18 in 77.
Right, sounds right.
So were you interested in punk music at the time, or were you interested in what is now be classic rock at the time? Because that would have been the real age, I think, when we would have made a decision.
That would be new wave.
Yeah.
The new wave stuff. And some punk. I mean, at the time, I don't know if Devo was considered punk or new wave, but back then it would be like Devo and Oingo Boingo and the B-52s and Talking Heads and that was another kind of golden age. Like all the kids that weren't into disco or straight ahead pop were into this like new wave stuff. So that definitely struck a responsive chord with me.
Although I suppose though, when you look at what you've done now in your career, it is mostly based on top 40 music. So when you were younger, were you not a top 40 fan, or was that what you loved?
No, I loved both. I mean, growing up, I definitely listened to KHJ 93 in Los Angeles and all the boss jocks and all the puking DJs, and I enjoyed that too. I mean, I was a big fan of the hits, and that was sort of the 70s were sort of a golden age of really great music and really horrible music. I mean, for every American Pie, there was a Afternoon Delight. There was like the yin and the yang of the pop music in the 70s. But I did enjoy pop music, and I still enjoy pop music, although this probably isn't my favorite era. I mean, I feel like an old man admitting that, but I kind of like real instruments and real bands playing real music, and I know that I sound ancient now, but that's sort of true.
Well, I suppose in Wales it would be weird if you were really into music that is so designed for the youth market. It would almost be failing if it really appealed to someone who was that much older,
I suppose so.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that way sometimes, When you hear top 40 music, how do you almost have a natural, intuitive reaction to start replacing the lyrics? Is that, or do you take a piece of music and decide you want to work on it?
Yeah, it doesn't usually happen naturally. I don't start freestyling in the car, It's usually it's more analytical than that. I mean, every once in a great while I'll be listening to a song on the radio and an idea will pop into my head. But that's certainly the exception rather than the norm. More often than not, I have to analytically make a list of all the songs in the last 6 months that made the Billboard Top 10 that I think are distinctive enough that people would consider them parody targets. And then for each of those songs, think of as many variations on a theme as I can and make lists. And then out of that, everything on that list, like which of these ideas have the most comedic potential. And it gets very, that's just my work habit. I mean, I don't know if a lot of comedians or musicians that would really work that way. But I'm very into making lists and really, being kind of anal about things, frankly.
Have there been any songs that you would have liked to parody, but they just didn't become popular enough?
Many.
Like, what are some examples of that?
Well, a lot of, songs that I thought would get a little bit more popular didn't. One example that I think of is, and I wound up releasing it anyway because it was a Mick Jagger song. It was the title track to the movie Ruthless People. And it was like, I needed one more song to finish the album. And it was like, Mick Jagger's got a new single out. I'll do Toothless People. Hilarious! And it wound up, the Mick Jagger song wound up not doing well at all. I don't think it even made the top 40. But at that point, I couldn't call up Mick Jagger and say, I can't really do this song. It kind of stiffed, So it made the album anyway.
Now, at that point, would you actually have a conversation with Mick Jagger regarding this, or was that still where there would just be interim?
More likely not. It's more likely his people would be talking to my people, or vice versa.
Yeah. But because now, after the situation with Coolio, now you make a point to always talk to the artist. Now, is that true? Or is that impossible? That might be impossible.
It's not always possible. If I know the artist or if I have some direct way to get to them, that's always preferable. But I don't go bowling with Lady Gaga every Thursday night, so I didn't happen to have her contact info. So we had to go through her manager, and that still is the usual situation. Like I don't know a lot of these people personally, and I don't know any of them most of them well enough to contact them directly. So it is still a matter of their peeps and my peeps.
All right. So the Lady Gaga situation. Now you had the songs, they saw the lyrics, they okayed it. Then at one point they didn't want it on there, and now it is on. No. That never happened.
That's close. They never okayed it originally. What happened was we were dealing with Lady Gaga's manager, and he said, we need to hear the song. Because normally I pitch them on a concept, like, I think the pitch was basically, I want to do a song based on Born This Way called Perform This Way, is basically a take on Lady Gaga's bigger-than-life persona, making fun of her wardrobe choices and her, just in general, how she presents herself to the world. It's good-natured, but we're poking fun, and blah, 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 and that's it. And we heard back, we need to hear it. So I, of course, took that to mean, I guess you need to see the lyrics because you're not 100% sold on the idea and you want to make sure that we're not poking too much fun at you. So I get that. So I was on the road in Australia, very busy, and it wasn't the most conducive situation for me to be writing lyrics, but, they wanted it, and I wanted to get the album release date locked in as soon as possible because I was hoping to tour behind it. So I came up with the lyrics, sent them out, and after about a week, they got back to us and said, no, we need to hear it. And I said, no, we haven't recorded it yet. It's like, I'm on the road. These are just lyrics. And they said, if we don't hear it, we're not going to approve it.
Well, that's surprising because in your entire career history, the parodies you've done have been extremely close musically. Like,
Well, that's what boggled my mind. Is because, if you've got the lyrics in front of you, what don't you know? You know how the song goes. Try to, it's not a huge leap of faith to, put my lyrics with your song. So it just was not computing, but we had been given an ultimatum, send us the recording or the answer's no. So I basically, after the Australian tour, I was going to go on a 2-week vacation with my family in Hawaii. That didn't happen. I went back to LA, went to the studio, spent a week recording Perform This Way, sent it in, and several days later we heard, no.
Well, I suppose legally they have no way of stopping you, though, right?
Well, it's a gray area. I always say that because, if it ever got to a court, chances are I would prevail, and, the Supreme Court has always ruled in favor of parody artists and blah, blah, blah. I I don't want to get into that kind of world. I mean, we live in a litigious society. I don't want to be like, antagonistic and confrontational, and, I just want us all to get along. I just, my whole career, I just always wanted the artist's blessing because I want them to be in on the joke. I want it to be all, in good fun. And, I've always felt that if they don't want me to do a parody, I'll walk away. But in this case, they'd kind of ticked me off because, they had made me spend a lot of time and a lot of money, frankly, in the studio recording this song, which now they said I could never use. So the next day, I uploaded it to YouTube and I said, hey, everybody. Actually, I also simultaneously blogged and told the whole story of what I've been going through and said, sorry, this isn't going to happen, but here's the song. Hope you enjoy it. And within hours, it became a media firestorm. I mean, everybody had my back. It was like, what is Lady Gaga doing to you? This is horrible. And it turns out that Lady Gaga had never been approached with it. It was all her manager, acting on her behalf, quote unquote. And Lady Gaga, it turns out, was a fan and thought the song was funny and let me do it. And like within hours, I had gone from, having and not knowing when the album was coming out to being able to lock it in and basically know what I was going to do for the rest of the year.
Well, it is interesting because whenever an artist does deny you or really anybody trying to parody their work, it almost always reflects badly on them. The immediate perception is that the artist takes themselves too seriously. So like a few years ago, you wanted to cover an Eminem song. And it was Lose Yourself, and it was going to be something about like couch potatoes or something. Right. He said no.
Well, it was weird in his case because he said yes to the song, and we made that the single, and the album was pressed, and we were starting to work on the video, and we heard back that he didn't want us to do the video. So it put us in a weird situation because it was the first single, and it didn't have a video, and I don't know why he was okay with the song, but was afraid that a Weird Al video would somehow take away his street cred. I don't know the logic.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, you obviously can't get inside his head. But when somebody says no to this, when somebody who is, a pre-existing figure who's very famous and has had success, and somebody really wants to do, in a way, the ultimate, almost tribute to this by copying it, why do you think Eminem would say, I don't want this to happen? Or when you've had people say no to you, have any of them ever explicitly given you an explanation as to why?
The only explanation I've ever gotten from a turn down was Paul McCartney, and people always bring him up as somebody who's turned me down.
But that's a weird one, though, because that was for vegetarian reasons.
Exactly, that was an actual reason. Yeah. For the people that don't know what we're talking about, way back when I wanted to do a parody of Live and Let Die called Chicken Pot Pie. I know, hilarious, thank you very much. And Paul McCartney said no, basically because of his vegetarian beliefs, and he didn't want a song used in any context that would be supposedly promoting the consumption of animal flesh. And you know what? I'm vegetarian too, and it didn't bother me, but it's a reason, and it's a valid reason, and I get it. And I hate it when people put him on the list of the humorless guys, because that wasn't the case at all. In fact, he said, think of any other subject, think of anything, I'm happy to okay it. He just didn't want that one.
Well, have there ever been situations where someone gave you a different reason that was more personal, that they thought, well, this is embarrassing to me, or I'm just curious as to what you think someone feels when they say no.
Yeah, usually I don't get a real reason. I mean, Prince had said no repeatedly throughout the 80s and part of the 90s, and never got any kind of answer out of him other than just no. So I don't know what goes through their heads. I don't know why they do it. I mean, it's a personal choice, and I can't fault them for saying no, but I'm just always curious, like, why somebody would say no.
Didn't you have some weird situation with Prince, too, where they sent you a telegram saying you couldn't look him in the eye?
That is true. That was one of the, gosh, what year was that? That was a while ago, but I think that was at an American Music Awards.
And you were seated by him.
Well, not next to him, but in the same row, I think it was. And it wasn't just me. From what he had apparently sent, or his management company on his behalf had sent telegrams to everybody seated in his immediate vicinity that they were not to establish eye contact with him.
How do they enforce that?
I think they're just aggressively being weird at that point. I mean, you can't. There's no way.
Did you defy this? Did you look him into the eye?
I did not, but I did send him back a telegram, advising him not to look at me either. So we were even at least for this show. But keep in mind, I mean, I think, and I dearly hope that he's kind of mellowed out over the years, and he's not quite as wacky as he was back then. But I don't know if you remember, but this is back when he was literally taking his bodyguard on stage with him, like this big hulking guy. Like he'd win an award, and his bodyguard would go on stage with him, as if like Kenny Loggins is going to like cold cock him or something. You know, it's like.
He's always like, there's that footage of him from the very first time he was on American Bandstand, and Dick Clark asks him a question about his life, and he just holds up 4 fingers, and that was his reaction. I mean, it just, you know, what, did you have a personal relationship with Michael Jackson? Because career-wise, obviously the first time you became famous to me was when Eat It came out. He clearly loved it. He helped you do a version of Bad using the same set. Did you have any kind of relationship with him that was outside of the professional sort of idiom?
No, not really. We never hung, you know, in any kind of real social setting. I met him twice in my life, briefly. He was very sweet, very nice. He did, you know, articulate that he loved the videos and a lot of the other, you know, things I did. He loved my feature film UHF. He said he played it on the ranch for his friends and stuff like that. Very sweet guy, but no, we never went bowling.
Did you ever? Did you go to his ranch and like see the giraffes or whatever, anything like that, or no?
No. You know, I actually was invited once, not by him, but by somebody else to go to the Neverland Ranch, and it was at a period when it would have been questionable to go. So I didn't, and I always wonder if I should have gone anyway.
You know, there's something I wanted to ask you about UHF. And I thought of this because of the situation that's happened this week with Tracy Morgan, when he got sort of trouble in Nashville, and there's all this sort of response on whether or not he has went too far, or if a comedian can go too far. I was curious because I know Michael Richards was in UHF. So when his situation happened a few years back, was that shocking to you? Did you think people are obviously misreading what must have happened? I have no idea if you remained friends with him after that movie. But I'm just always curious, if you know someone personally who's suddenly embroiled in that kind of controversy, what is the impact on you?
Well, I just feel sorry for them, obviously. I mean, you know, Michael Richards and I aren't close. I mean, we've, you know, kept in touch a little bit over the years. He did a little bit of the commentary on the UHF DVD. But, you know, it was shocking because, you know, he certainly didn't seem like a racist on the set of UHF. And
he did no racist things on the set that you remember.
And frankly, you know, I might get people mad for saying this, but I don't really think he is a racist. He just has rage issues. He just lost control, and it was like a Tourette's kind of thing. I don't really think he believes or feels the things he said that night. It's just that he made some extremely bad choices, and he's since obviously been paying the price for that.
Okay, just going off from that, you know, sort of on the idea of parodying songs, are there certain songs that you would not do a satire of because you feel the song itself, the message is too important?
You know, it's a gray area. I mean, I hate to say no because as a satirist, you should not feel that anything is sacred. You should be willing to make fun of everything. But there's always
like Four Dead in Ohio or something. Would that be a weird song for you to do?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Tears in Heaven. You kind of don't want to like. There are a few songs that you kind of maybe not the best. Even frankly, even Born This Way, when that first came out, I was looking forward to the new Lady Gaga single, thinking like, oh, you know, this is going to be some major pop culture event, and I should really tackle this. And when I first heard Born This Way, I thought, oh man, is this like a big, like, you know, gay rights anthem, and it's a real positive song, and I really don't think I should be doing this. But then I came up with the idea for Perform This Way, and I visualized, you know, my music video, and I thought, oh, this would be so good. And the way I was able to rationalize it was I made the decision early on that I was going to donate all of my proceeds for the single and the video to the Human Rights Campaign because, you know, I felt that at least in my own way and in my own head, that allowed me to poke fun at what I thought was, you know, an empowering song.
You know, I noticed though whenever we're talking about these songs, you know, you talk about the kind of the conceit of the joke, and you always sort of apologize for it. Why do you feel the need to apologize for something that, one, you know, is kind of the center of your life in a lot of ways, and also makes a lot of other people happy? Do you feel somewhat ashamed by your own sense of humor?
I don't know so much that I am.
I wouldn't have thought so, but every time you bring a thing up, you go like, aha, that was crazy, I get it, I'm a genius. You're always sarcastically making fun of your material. So I'm wondering if you feel a little...
I'm self-deprecating a lot, but I don't know. I don't feel guilty for what I do. I think I fulfill a need. I think people appreciate what I do, and I do a service in life, and I don't feel like my life was wasted.
Well, I like when you look at your fan base, I do think it's very interesting because, you know, your material is very popular to people when they're young. I think then if they become serious music fans, they have problems with it in their 20s and 30s, and then they come back to it again later. Have you noticed that when you look at least the appreciation of it, you know?
Sometimes, yeah, there are certainly fans that go through their teenage years and retain an appreciation for what I do. But yeah, it seems like cyclically, various synapses fire in your brain, which alternately make you appreciate parody songs or not. So, I think a lot of people go through. I don't know if I ever went through a cool stage during my teenage years, but yeah, I've noticed that like sometimes kids that were like real into me when they were like 12 are like too hip for me by the time they're 14. And then by the time they're 22 again, they're like, oh, I always loved Al.
Like, did you suspect when you went to Nirvana to do a cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit, did you have this fear maybe Kurt Cobain would be like, I'm offended by this, or did you anticipate that other musicians will appreciate it?
Well, I always, give musicians the benefit of the doubt, and even though I didn't know Kurt, I got the vibe that he would be totally cool with it. I mean, he always had that kind of persona that he, could take a joke, and he didn't take anything very seriously, and he was, I really thought that if we could get beyond the handlers and the managers and everybody else and get right to Kurt, which is what I did, that he'd be fine with it, and that was the case exactly.
So where were you talking to Kurt Cobain? Where do you meet him at?
I talked to him on the phone when he was doing Saturday Night Live for the first time. We had I had a friend also from UHF, Victoria Jackson, who's also sort of a controversial lightning rod these days. But she put me in contact with Kurt, and I got to talk to him directly. My manager told me that he wasn't getting phone calls returned from Nirvana's management, and he's like, Al, if you want this parody, it's on you. You got to go on a quest, track down the band. So I talked to Kurt directly, and I wish I had some kind of phone recording equipment because I would love to, that was a historic conversation. It was very, very brief, but basically I, told him I loved the album and congratulations, and I wanted to do a parody of Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it was basically going to be the famous thing he said was like, yeah, great, it's going to be a song about food, because like probably half my songs in the 80s were about food. And I was like, well, actually it's about how nobody can understand your lyrics. And I think there might have been a half a second pause, and he said, yeah, okay, great, sounds fun.
I want to ask you something now that's it's kind of a weird thing to ask you about because it's not funny, and most of this conversation is funny, but as I was reading before preparing for this interview, I just came across this sort of pretty amazing story about your parents and a show you did basically right after hearing the news of their death. Would you talk a little bit about that? Like what happened? And
yeah. I mean, obviously, this was, I'm happy to talk about it. It's like the most painful day of my life. So it's always hard to put me back in that headspace. But basically, I had found out, I got a phone call from my wife that afternoon, which was April 9, 2004, that my parents had been found dead in their home from carbon monoxide poisoning. They had started a fire and did not have the flue open, and they died in their homes. And I found out the news through the phone call, and I was shattered, of course. And
you were in like Mankato, Minnesota,
something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. I was on my tour bus when I found out.
How did your wife tell you that?
She was in tears, and it was horrible. I mean, what can I tell you? I mean, it's like the worst phone call.
I mean, you must have known immediately when you started talking to her that something terrible had happened.
Well, she was in tears, and the first thing I thought was, oh no, the bird died. And wouldn't it be much worse than that?
But then sort of the amazing thing about this story to me, I mean, it's obviously a tragic thing, but you performed about an hour after hearing this.
That's
oh, is that apocryphal? Is that not?
No, it's what would it have been? I mean, gosh, I found out. Well, it was mid-afternoon, and the show wasn't until 7 or 8 o'clock, so I'd say 4 or 5 hours.
Okay, well, still a short amount of time considering the event. And I think you had said during the show, according to the story I read, that like you in order to stop from crying all the time, you wanted to do something that made people feel good. Did it make you feel better, or did you spend the entire show basically mimicking songs while thinking about your parents?
It kind of was the latter. I mean, it didn't make me feel good, but it just was something to do. I don't think I slept for about 2 or 3 days after the incident, and I just needed stuff to occupy my time and my mind because it was a lot of denial, frankly. I mean, I didn't want to accept the situation. It was all too much for me to take in. So the fact that for 2 hours every night I could go on stage and pretend I was a happy guy. It was almost robotic. I mean, on stage, I don't think people could tell that I was just like, a mess, just a shambles inside, because of muscle memory. I just went through the set smiling, doing the show, entertaining people, and then got off stage and went back to the bus and just collapsed.
Well, I mean, as an entertainer, that robotic part, that probably happens quite often. I mean, anytime you're doing the same repetitive thing over and over again, but it's so different when this had happened. I mean, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah. And the thing was, I didn't want people to know, because I didn't want everybody to be looking at me on stage going, "Oh, you poor guy," and just to,
Well, was there any press coverage at the time?
Well, here's what it happened very quickly. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to keep it on the down low. I didn't even want to tell the guys in the band and the crew, because I didn't want everybody to be walking on eggshells around me. I just wanted normalcy. I just wanted to deal with my tragedy in a very personal, private way, and not involve other people, and just feel the pain on my own and not involve other people. But what happened was, it became a worldwide news story within about 12 hours. So, I mean, it was on CNN, it was on the news in China. It was a major news story. So, of course, everybody found out very quickly. It made it, besides being obviously very difficult to do the shows, it made it now a little awkward, because people were coming to the shows of a guy whose folks had just died. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we started doing a little dedication to my parents before the shows to kind of deal with the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, and it wasn't, it's always hard for me to, like I said, to go back to that point in my life, because it was horrible. It was just, the worst thing. I basically, I was on stage for 2 hours every night, and then no meet and greets, no interviews, no nothing. I would just stay by myself. My drummer, John Bermuda Schwartz, was a great friend during all of it. He, he was sort of like my shoulder to cry on, and just to kind of be with me while I was going through my grief. And it was just really hard, man. It was just.
I'm sure it was. There was something else. This is kind of weird. I wanted to ask you about. Some years ago, a friend of mine ran into you in a bookstore in Rochester, Minnesota, and you weren't performing there. And the only reason a famous person usually is in Rochester is to go to the Mayo Clinic. I was wondering, did you have any health problems or anything of that?
No. I can't tell you why I was in Rochester, Minnesota, if in fact I was. It could have been one of my many doppelgangers.
It could be, I guess.
It could have been Kenny G. Who knows? But I can't tell you. I don't think I've ever been to the Mayo Clinic.
I suppose you are an easy person to look like. In a way,
well,
because you have very distinctive qualities, and
they sell those Weird Al Halloween costumes, so it's like a lot of versions of you running around.
You mentioned your drummer in your band. How long have you had this band together?
Long time. I've had my drummer since September 14, 1980. My guitar player and bass, I should give you the names, of course. John Bermuda Schwartz is my drummer. My guitar player, Jim West, and my bass player, Steve J. I've been with it since about 1982, and they've been on all the albums with me. My touring keyboard player, Ruben Valtierra, sometimes he's usually only on 1 or 2 tracks on the album, and he's more our touring guy, and he's only been with us for about 20 years, so he's the new guy.
I have to admit, your guitar player on that Charles Nelson Riley song on this record, that the White Stripes song, it's great.
Thank you.
And you know what's very interesting to me about it? When I hear something like that, it starts to make me wonder, how difficult is rock music to perform? Because I look at Jack White as this sort of this great guitar player, and obviously he is, and he's a very original person, and what he's doing is sort of basically taking these influences and doing something new with it. But yet when I hear your guy playing it, it kind of sounds like it could be a White Stripes song.
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I've had the good luck to find people for my band that make that stuff look easy. I mean, they're extremely talented, and virtually every interview that I do, I talk about how amazing it is that they can do everything from gangster rap to Zydeco music, and virtually every genre in between, and make it look effortless.
Have there been any songs too difficult to perform? Have you ever tried to do a Rush song or a Genesis song, and that you actually couldn't replicate the?
I am confident. I don't want to sound braggy, but I'm confident that my band could duplicate anything out there. I mean, they're good. They're very skilled musicians.
This is unrelated, but I thought it was interesting. I read something how when you were in high school, you were valedictorian of your class and all these things, but you had started a group called the Volcano Worshippers, which was like an extracurricular activity. Did this happen around the time of Mount St. Helens? Was that what drove you to starting a group called what did the Volcano Worshippers do as an activity?
I don't know about the timeline with Mount St. Helens. It
was like 81 when you've been out of high school. Yeah,
before.
This was the 70s, which is kind of a low time for volcano worship.
Right,
there were no sort of
it was on the wane.
Yeah. So you and your friends just started a group that talked about volcanoes?
We did absolutely nothing. The whole conceit of the Volcano Worshippers were just for grins, we decided to start a club solely for the purpose of getting an extra picture in the yearbook. We started this fake club. We took a picture, we sent it in, and we were the Volcano Worshippers. We never had a meeting. We never did a single thing.
Well, I know you've got to get going here, so I'm just going to end with this. When I've listened to your music, it's always so informed by popular culture and television, and you obviously have an authentic love of popular culture. But I'm wondering, because you've studied it as closely as you have, what are the problems you see with contemporary popular culture? What are things you don't like about a television and film and sort of a lot of the things that you've built, or I guess food, these things that you've sort of built your songwriting around? Because now you've had enough years to sort of look back and see the evolution of culture in a pretty broad scope.
Yeah, and that's a broad question. It's hard to give you a really articulate answer, but one thing I'll say is, and I might just be imagining this as I'm getting older, but it feels like people's attention spans are getting smaller, and the cycles of everything. Songs are popular for a shorter period of time. Mm-hmm. Movies, TV shows, they are all a little bit more ephemeral, and people just seem not to be paying as close attention to things anymore. I mean, there's not a communal thing like we had with MTV where everybody was watching the same videos. Now our culture is fragmented and splintered, and there's subgenres, and that's healthy. It's nice to have choice, and it's nice to be able to have access to all these different things, but it also means that it is fragmented. I mean, we don't have a communal thing going on anymore.
But when you talk about MTV as the communal thing, I think a lot of people would say they're the people who accelerated this kind of erosion of the attention span by creating shows that were 4 minutes long. I mean, I wonder if are a lot of the things that you loved growing up sort of the explanation behind why this has happened.
It's very possible. I mean, MTV was sort of the architect, or if not the architect, the perpetuator of the fast cut edit and the whole Miami Vice style, which took on, and then the shaky camera and all that. And a lot of things that started innocently enough and were fun and novel at the time have devolved into something maybe not so great.
Okay, one last thing and I'll let you go. Tough question, but when you look back at your entire catalog of singles, what is your greatest work? What would you say is the sort of the apex of the Weird Al catalog?
I get asked that question, and I'll just have to give you my default answer, which was white and nerdy. Just because I feel like that's my most personal work. It's I wouldn't say it's 100% autobiographical, but I didn't have to do a whole lot of research. I got to draw on a lot of personal experience on that one.
Well, I'll tell you what, thanks a lot for coming in here. I really appreciate talking to you.
This was a pleasure. Thank you, Chuck.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.